I caught her red-handed. The HOA president, squatting in my late grandma's mountain cabin like it was hers. I drive up the snowy private road and Brenda Hutchcraft opens my door in a fluffy bathrobe, Starbucks in hand. The same Karen who fines families $500 for wrong mailbox colors. She snaps,
"You're trespassing! Get out, or I call the sheriff!"
her boyfriend's boots by the fireplace, designer luggage in the living room, makeup scattered on grandma's vanity. She's lived rent-free in my inheritance for months, while charging me HOA fees. The audacity was breathtaking. She blocks my doorway, smirking like she owns the place. But Brenda made one fatal mistake. This cabin sits at the end of a one-lane mountain road with only one way out. And I control that exit. What would you do? Drop your craziest HOA horror story below and tell me where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare started. My name's Jake Riverside, and 3 months ago I inherited my grandmother Ethel's A-frame cabin in Pine Ridge Mountains. Grandma was tougher than a $2 steak, survived the Depression, raised 5 kids alone, and built this place with her own hands back when women weren't supposed to know which end of a hammer to hold. The cabin sits on 3 acres with creek access worth about $380,000. My plan was simple. Fix it up as a weekend retreat, maybe rent it out for extra cash after my ex-wife took half my electrical contracting business in the divorce. But first, I had to deal with the HOA from hell. Pine Ridge Community Association covers 40 properties scattered across the mountain. Most residents are decent folks, retirees who just want to feed deer and complain about the weather. Monthly dues are reasonable at $150 for road maintenance and snow plowing. Then there's Brenda Hutchcraft. Picture the worst Karen you've ever met, give her a real estate license and 8 years of unchecked power. That's Brenda. She's 45, married to Derek, who works for county planning. Talk about a power couple made in bureaucratic heaven. This woman turned HOA violations into performance art. Poor Mrs. Patterson got slapped with a $500 fine because her mailbox was hunter green instead of regulation forest green. Apparently Brenda carries paint chips around like some kind of color-coordinating serial killer. The Johnsons fined $750 for parking their RV in their own driveway for 3 days. Brenda claimed it lowered property values and attracted transients. It was a brand new $80,000 Winnebago, not some rusted-out meth lab on wheels. But her masterpiece was threatening the elderly Kowalskis with a lawsuit because their grass was half an inch too long. Mr. Kowalski was recovering from heart surgery, and Brenda actually showed up with a ruler to measure their lawn while the poor man was still on oxygen. The smell of her expensive perfume mixed with legal threats hung over our community like toxic fog. But targeting retirees was apparently getting boring, because she locked onto me the moment Grandma's obituary hit the paper. It started with a letter demanding $400 in inheritance transfer fees, a made-up charge that doesn't exist in our covenants. Then came notices about deferred maintenance violations on a property that was maintained better than the White House lawn. Each letter arrived with the distinctive sound of certified mail thudding against my door like legal grenades. The threats escalated. Liens, foreclosure, court action, standard bully playbook. I figured it was just power trip nonsense. Pay the bogus fees, survive her tantrum, move on. I was drowning in divorce paperwork and trying to keep my business afloat. Didn't have energy for HOA drama. That was my first mistake. The second red flag came when neighbors started asking weird questions. Heard you're having money problems? Brenda mentioned the inheritance is tied up in court. She said there might be tax issues. Tax issues? The property taxes were current, probate cleared smoothly. I had every document filed correctly, but somehow Brenda was spreading rumors that my ownership was questionable. Then came the emergency caretaker assessment letter. 14 pages of legal gobbledygook claiming the HOA had abandoned property concerns and was implementing interim protective management. Translation: they were charging me $350 monthly for someone to babysit my own cabin. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, the kind of legal stationery that costs more per page than most people make per hour. But here's the kicker. This caretaker had supposedly found significant structural issues requiring immediate intervention during her preliminary assessment. Nobody had permission to enter that property. I'd been there 2 weeks earlier. Everything was perfect. Pipes winterized, shutters secured, not even a mouse dropping in the pantry. That's when I decided to surprise visit my own cabin, and caught Brenda red-handed, living there like she'd won it in a poker game. Brenda didn't waste time playing defense after I caught her squatting. Within 48 hours, she went full nuclear. I'm sitting at my kitchen table Tuesday morning staring at a certified mail package thick enough to stop bullets. The expensive paper stock felt smooth and threatening between my fingers, the kind of legal stationery that costs more per page than most people make per hour. 14 pages from Harrison, Blackwell and Associates, some fancy Denver law firm. They claimed I was harassing HOA personnel and creating a hostile environment. The demand? 72-hour written notice before accessing my own cabin, or face $1,000 daily fines for unauthorized entry. But Brenda's real masterstroke came through her husband Derek's county connections. An emergency septic inspection notice arrived the same day. According to the paperwork, I had 30 days to hire licensed contractors for a septic system requiring 6 months of environmental permits to repair. The estimated cost? $15,000. Here's what Derek was counting on me not knowing. Something I'd learned helping my electrician buddy work on older mountain properties. Cabins built before 1970 typically use composting toilets and gray water systems, not septic tanks. My grandmother's place had a perfectly legal composting system that had been working fine since Kennedy was president. Derek had just created a bureaucratic nightmare based on infrastructure that didn't exist. The smell of diesel fuel and fresh snow hit me as I drove back up the mountain that afternoon, determined to document everything. But Brenda had been busy upgrading her fortress. Motion sensors and security cameras now blanketed every approach. The moment my boots hit the driveway, sirens started wailing like I'd triggered a prison break. The piercing sound echoed off the mountains, probably audible 3 valleys over. Brenda appeared at the door with her cell phone already recording. "You're violating the restraining order," she announced, projecting for her phone's microphone. "I'm documenting this harassment for the authorities." Restraining order? I hadn't been served with anything, but that didn't matter to the neighbors who came running when the alarms went off. Brenda put on quite the performance, trembling voice, crocodile tears, the whole victim routine that would have made Hollywood weep. "He's been stalking me for weeks," she told Mrs. Lucy from down the road. "Ever since I discovered his family owes thousands in back taxes and HOA violations. I'm just trying to protect our community's property values." The audacity was breathtaking. She was living illegally in my inheritance while painting me as some kind of deadbeat who couldn't pay his bills. But while Brenda was busy performing for her audience, I was scrolling through property records on my phone. My grandmother had been obsessive about paperwork, kept everything in fireproof filing cabinets going back to the Eisenhower administration. That's when I spotted something that made my heart race. The original 1962 easement agreement. I'd seen it before in Grandma's papers, but never understood its significance. She'd negotiated perpetual easement rights with exclusive maintenance authority when she bought the lot. My electrician training had taught me enough about property law to recognize what this meant. When you own land accessed by a private road crossing other properties, somebody has to control that road legally. In most cases, it's shared access. But Grandma had been smart. She'd secured exclusive control. I didn't just own the cabin. I controlled who could use the road to reach it. The realization hit like a lightning strike. Brenda had trapped herself on property that could only be reached by a road I had legal authority to close for maintenance, repairs, or safety reasons. Colorado law was crystal clear on this. Easement holders could restrict access for legitimate infrastructure work, but I kept this discovery locked away like a loaded weapon. Instead, I played the confused, frustrated property owner, apologized to the neighbors for disturbing the peace, let Brenda think her legal intimidation and victim performance were working, drove away from my own property like some kind of defeated trespasser. That night, sleep was impossible. The sound of those sirens kept echoing in my head, mixed with the crunch of snow under my retreating footsteps. She'd turned reality completely upside down, made herself the victim and me the villain. Brenda was using her husband's government position to create fake violations, hiring expensive lawyers to threaten me with my own money, convincing half the neighborhood that I was the problem while she lived rent-free in my family's cabin like some kind of entitled mountain queen. But she had no idea she'd just handed me the ultimate trump card. That winding mountain road she was using to access her illegal vacation rental was about to become her prison. The taste of incoming justice was already sweeter than my grandmother's famous apple pie recipe. Brenda's next move proved she was willing to destroy me financially to protect her mountain paradise. The lien notice arrived on a Friday, because nothing ruins your weekend quite like discovering someone's trying to steal your property through legal theft. The crisp legal paper felt expensive between my fingers, the kind of stationery that screams, "We have better lawyers than you." $8,600 in accumulated HOA fees, late penalties, and emergency assessments. The breakdown was pure fiction. Backdated lawn violations from when the property was empty during probate. Snow removal charges for a driveway nobody was using. Even a $1,200 emergency tree trimming fee for work that was never performed. But the real masterpiece? A $3,500 charge for unauthorized occupancy monitoring services during the exact months Brenda had been squatting there. She was literally billing me for the privilege of her stealing my cabin. Things got worse when the process server showed up at my job site. Professional woman in a business suit, completely out of place among our electrical equipment and hard hats. The smell of hot metal and wire insulation couldn't mask the stench of my professional reputation going down the toilet. "Jacob Riverside, you're being served with foreclosure proceedings." Right in front of my entire crew. Martinez, my supervisor, watched the whole show with raised eyebrows. Nothing says reliable employee quite like getting served legal papers during lunch break. "Financial troubles, Riverside?" Martinez asked after she left. His tone was carefully neutral, but contractors with money problems become unemployed contractors pretty quickly. That weekend, I turned into a forensic accountant, digging through HOA records my lawyer had subpoenaed. What I found made my coffee taste like battery acid. Brenda had been systematically robbing the community for years. Her brother-in-law's Pine Ridge Landscaping charged $15,000 for maintaining hiking trails that existed only on paper. Phantom snow removal bills totaling $22,000 over 3 winters. Apparently, we had the most expensive snow in Colorado history. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Every inflated invoice had Brenda's fingerprints on it. Every mysterious contractor was somehow related to her family tree. She'd stolen at least $67,000 from neighbors who trusted her to manage their dues responsibly. But the real gut punch came when I discovered why she was so desperate to keep my cabin. Her own house was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. The real estate downturn had killed her income, and she owed $14,000 in back payments. My grandmother's cabin wasn't just her illegal vacation rental, it was her financial life preserver. She'd been living rent-free in my inheritance while secretly renting out her actual home on Airbnb. Pure genius if you enjoy fraud. Then I found the estate sale receipts, and my vision went red. Brenda had sold my grandmother's belongings to strangers. Antique furniture that survived the Depression. Hand-sewn quilts that took months to complete. Even family photographs in their original frames, pictures of my grandfather in his army uniform. My grandmother's graduation from nursing school. 60 years of family history sold for $1,800 in pocket change. The restraining order arrived that Sunday, delivered by a sheriff's deputy who looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Mr. Riverside, you're prohibited from approaching Brenda Hutchcraft or the property at 847 Pine Ridge Road." My own address. She'd gotten a court order banning me from my own inheritance. "For what it's worth," the deputy said with an apologetic shrug, "this is the weirdest property dispute I've seen in 20 years. But Brenda's legal genius backfired spectacularly during the court hearing. When the judge asked for her current address, she confidently stated my cabin's location, the same property she needed protection from me visiting. His Honor's confusion was beautiful to watch. "Ms. Hutchcraft, you're requesting a restraining order to protect you from someone approaching property where you currently live, property that he claims to own legally?" My attorney slid the deed across the bench. Clear title, proper inheritance, everything bulletproof. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. "Restraining order dismissed. Ms. Hutchcraft, you will vacate this property immediately." Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, as we left the courthouse, Brenda leaned close enough that I could smell her desperation mixing with expensive perfume. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice carrying a promise that made my skin crawl. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." Sitting in my truck afterward, engine running against the December cold, I realized something important. Brenda wasn't just a petty tyrant anymore. She was cornered. Court ordered to leave, financial crimes exposed, her illegal scheme unraveling. Desperate people do desperate things. And I was about to discover exactly how dangerous a desperate HOA president could become. Brenda's response to losing in court was to declare total war on my reputation. She called an emergency HOA meeting for Tuesday night, sending notices about removing a dangerous individual who threatens community safety. The smell of fresh ink on the hastily printed flyers mixed with my growing rage as I read her accusations. According to Brenda's PowerPoint presentation, because of course she made slides, I was planning to turn my cabin into a drug den for Denver criminals. She brought her sister and neighbor as fake witnesses, claiming I'd been violent and threatening during our confrontations. The proposed solution? A special assessment of $25,000 per property to hire private security. Against me, the guy who'd been paying his dues and minding his own business until she started squatting in my inheritance. But Colonel Patterson, our neighborhood's retired Marine, stood up and derailed her show. Where exactly did our reserve fund go, Brenda? According to these bank statements, we should have enough money to pave every road twice over. The meeting exploded. Neighbors demanding audits, accusations flying, Brenda's character assassination turning into an investigation of her own corruption. While she was busy defending her embezzlement, I was conducting reconnaissance on my own property. Trail cameras around the perimeter, perfectly legal on my own land, captured something that made my blood boil. Brenda wasn't just squatting, she was running an illegal bed and breakfast. Different cars every weekend, couples with overnight bags. Brenda greeting paying guests like a resort hostess, handing out keys to my grandmother's cabin. The audio was crystal clear. $200 per night for this exclusive mountain retreat that's been in our family for generations. Our family, my ass. But then the cameras caught something that changed everything. Thursday night, 2 a.m., infrared footage showed Brenda sneaking behind the cabin with a metal lockbox, constantly looking over her shoulder. She spent 20 minutes digging near the old fire pit, burying something under pine needles and rocks. Friday morning, I hiked up with a metal detector. The box contained $12,000 in cash and the official HOA checkbook. Stolen funds she couldn't deposit without triggering fraud investigations. She'd literally buried the evidence in my backyard. That's when I realized something that sent chills down my spine. Brenda wasn't just stealing money and squatting in my cabin. She was systematically destroying evidence and preparing to disappear. The illegal rental income, the buried cash, the social media smear campaign, it was all covering her escape plan. Her Facebook group, Pine Ridge Safety Alert, had photos of my truck, my license plate, even surveillance pictures of me taken without permission. Daily posts about my stalking behavior and threats against leadership. Her sister posting fake stories about me peering into windows. But the mini twist that nearly gave me a heart attack came in her latest post. Update. Dangerous individual has escalated threats, considering relocation for family safety. Pray for us during this difficult time. Relocation. She was planning to flee before the criminal investigation caught up to her. Then her phone rang. I could hear it through my trail camera audio. Her conversation with someone she called Rick made my stomach drop. The property should sell for at least $300,000, she said, pacing behind my cabin. I've already got a cash buyer lined up from California. He thinks he's buying from the original owner's estate. She was planning to forge documents and sell my inheritance to some unsuspecting buyer, the ultimate theft, steal the property, sell it to a stranger, disappear with the money. The taste of copper flooded my mouth as the full scope of her plan became clear. This wasn't petty HOA corruption anymore. This was federal real estate fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. She was about to steal my family's legacy and vanish with enough money to start over somewhere else. That's when the local news reporter called me back. Mr. Riverside, we've been investigating HOA corruption across Colorado. Your case isn't unique, but it might be the most extensive fraud we've documented. Would you be willing to go on camera? The scent of opportunity mixed with mountain pine as I realized Brenda had finally made her fatal mistake. She'd documented everything herself. The illegal rental operation, the social media lies, even her conversation about selling stolen property. But she had no idea I was recording it all. And she definitely didn't know about that 1962 easement agreement sitting in my grandmother's filing cabinet, the document that gave me control over the only road off this mountain. Winter was coming. The first major snowfall would make that winding mountain road treacherous, maybe even impassable without proper maintenance. And guess who was legally responsible for maintaining it? Everything changed when I found my grandmother's secret filing cabinet. I'd been through her paperwork before, but grief makes you sloppy. This time I was methodical, pulling out every drawer, checking for false bottoms, looking for hidden compartments. The musty smell of old paper and her lavender sachets filled the basement as I discovered a locked metal box bolted inside her workbench. The key was exactly where Grandma Ethel would have hidden it, taped under the bottom drawer, wrapped in one of her grocery lists written in fading blue ink. Even in death, she was still teaching me to be thorough. Inside that box was legal gold that made my hands shake. The original 1962 easement agreement wasn't just about road access. It was a masterpiece of mountain property law. Perpetual easement rights with exclusive maintenance authority and termination provisions. I could close the road for up to 30 days for essential infrastructure repairs, but Section 7 was the nuclear option. Easement privileges shall be immediately revoked upon any criminal activity or fraud committed by property owners using said access. Criminal activity, like embezzlement, like insurance fraud, like running illegal rental operations in stolen property. I could legally cut off Brenda's access forever. The forensic accountant called that afternoon with numbers that made my blood pressure spike. Jake, this is worse than we imagined. I've documented systematic theft going back 4 years. Total missing funds, $127,000. $127,000. Stolen from retirees living on fixed incomes who trusted Brenda with their community dues. Here's the kicker, the accountant continued. Your HOA has been technically bankrupt for 8 months. No money for snow plowing, road maintenance, or emergency services. She's been running a financial shell game. Every fake assessment, every manufactured crisis, every emergency fee was covering up the fact that Brenda had drained the community's life savings. The taste of rage mixed with the stale coffee I'd been nursing all afternoon. The insurance investigator's email arrived an hour later, confirming federal crimes that carried mandatory prison sentences, $18,000 in fraudulent claims on my cabin. Weather damage she'd staged, vandalism she'd performed herself, equipment theft involving tools that were never missing. My phone buzzed, Derek's voice trembling like autumn leaves. Jake, I need to confess something. About Brenda. About what we've been doing. Derek was ready to cooperate. His planning department career was already over after falsifying documents, but felony charges terrified him more than his wife's threats. She said she'd take half my pension in the divorce if I didn't help her, he whispered, the sound of traffic in the background suggesting he was calling from somewhere Brenda couldn't overhear. The septic violations, the fake inspections, I knew it was wrong, but she claimed it was temporary until the HOA finances recovered. Temporary. 4 years of systematic fraud was her idea of temporary. There's something else. Derek's voice dropped to barely audible. She's packing tonight. Plans to leave before dawn. She thinks the criminal investigation is closing in. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth. After stealing from an entire community, destroying families with bogus fines, and squatting in my inheritance, Brenda was going to vanish into the night like some kind of white-collar ghost. But she'd miscalculated one critical detail. To escape Pine Ridge Mountains, she had to drive down that narrow access road, the same road my easement agreement gave me absolute authority to control. The same road that was about to undergo some very necessary, very time-consuming winter infrastructure improvements. Snow was forecast for tomorrow, and that road was about to become impassable for anyone trying to flee justice. Time to turn Brenda's mountain paradise into her prison. I spent Tuesday night researching legitimate road maintenance requirements, cross-referencing Colorado Department of Transportation guidelines with my easement rights. The beauty of having an electrician's background. I understood infrastructure, permits, and most importantly, how long real construction projects actually take. The creek crossing had been bothering me for months anyway. The old corrugated metal culvert my grandmother installed in the 1970s was partially collapsed, creating drainage issues that would only get worse with spring snowmelt. A legitimate repair that happened to require completely blocking vehicle access. Perfect cover for what I had planned. Wednesday morning, I called Rocky Mountain Excavation. I need a crew to replace a box culvert under a private road. When's your earliest availability? We could start Monday if you've got your permits lined up, the foreman said. But that's a big job, probably 10 days minimum once we start digging. Road will be completely impassable during construction. 10 days, more than enough time for law enforcement to catch up with Brenda's crimes. My attorney helped navigate the legal notification requirements. Colorado law demanded 72 hours written notice to all affected property owners before road closure. I hand-delivered certified letters to every cabin on the mountain explaining the emergency culvert replacement due to imminent structural failure. Technically true. The culvert really was failing, just not as immediately as my timeline suggested. The supply logistics took careful coordination. I ordered concrete box culvert sections from Denver, heavy machinery required for installation, no way to fake it with smaller equipment. The 40-foot sections would need crane trucks to position properly, guaranteeing complete road blockage during the process. Colonel Patterson stopped by Thursday evening while I was reviewing construction plans. The smell of his pipe tobacco mixed with mountain air as he studied my paperwork on the tailgate of my truck. "This is legitimate work," he said, nodding approvingly. "Been telling the HOA for years that culvert needed attention. Brenda always claimed there wasn't money in the budget, because she'd stolen the budget, but I kept that observation to myself." "You know what you're doing here, son?" Patterson asked, his marine instincts reading between the lines. "Fixing a drainage problem before it becomes a safety hazard," I replied truthfully. "Can't have the only access road washing out during spring floods." Patterson smiled. "Good thing you're being proactive. Hate to see anyone get trapped up here when that culvert finally fails." Friday afternoon, I visited every neighbor personally to explain the construction timeline. Mrs. Lucy offered to coordinate with other residents about carpooling to town for groceries before the road closure. The Kowalskis thanked me for finally addressing the drainage issues they'd been complaining about for years. Everyone was supportive, everyone except Brenda, who wasn't answering her door. But her boyfriend's motorcycle was still parked in my grandmother's driveway, and smoke was rising from the chimney. They were definitely still there, probably planning their escape for the weekend. Saturday morning brought the final pieces into place. The concrete delivery trucks arrived at 6 a.m., requiring coordination with utility companies to mark underground lines. Orange construction barriers and professional road closure signs transformed the peaceful mountain access into an official work zone. I positioned everything perfectly. The barriers went up exactly where the private road met county highway, the last possible point for vehicle exit from the mountain properties. Anyone wanting to leave would need to drive through an active construction site with heavy machinery and massive concrete sections blocking their path. The excavator operator, a grizzled guy named Murphy, surveyed the job site with professional satisfaction. "Haven't seen a culvert this shot in 20 years, he said, examining the collapsed drainage. "Good thing you're fixing it before winter really hits. This thing would have washed out completely with the first major snowmelt." Murphy's crew began work immediately, digging the 8-foot deep, 12-foot wide trench required for the new culvert installation. The sound of heavy machinery echoed off the mountains, announcing to everyone within miles that serious construction was underway. By Sunday afternoon, the road was completely impassable, a gaping chasm where the crossing used to be, surrounded by concrete sections, construction equipment, and safety barriers that would take days to navigate even on foot. The weather forecast called for snow Monday night, the first major storm of the season. Perfect timing for anyone who might be thinking about hiking out through the mountains to avoid the construction zone. I spent Sunday evening in my truck, parked where I could monitor the work site and watch for any activity from my cabin. The taste of anticipation mixed with hot coffee from my thermos as I waited for Brenda to realize her situation. She'd been stealing from the community for years, living illegally in my inheritance, planning to sell my property to unsuspecting buyers. But now she was trapped on a mountain with no way out except through me. Justice was about to be served at 8,000 feet above sea level. Brenda's desperation peaked when she realized the walls were closing in. Monday morning, I watched through binoculars as she emerged from my cabin, coffee mug in hand, probably planning another day of illegal vacation rental management. Then she saw the construction barriers. The mug hit the deck and shattered. From my observation post half a mile down the mountain, I could see her frantically waving at Murphy's excavation crew, pointing toward the gaping trench where the road used to be. The sound of her voice carried across the valley, shrill and panicked, but the heavy machinery drowned out her actual words. Murphy just shrugged and pointed to the posted work schedule. 10 days minimum, weather permitting. That's when Brenda's survival instincts kicked into overdrive. By Tuesday, she'd discovered my construction permits through Derek's remaining county connections and tried filing an emergency injunction to stop the work. The legal paperwork claimed the road closure would trap residents illegally and constituted false imprisonment. Judge Morrison dismissed her case in about 5 minutes. "Ms. Hutchcraft, Mr. Riverside holds clear easement rights to maintain this infrastructure. You're requesting the court prevent legitimate safety repairs on private property where you currently reside without permission?" The irony was beautiful. Brenda's illegal squatting made it impossible for her to claim legal resident status deserving protection. But Wednesday brought her most desperate gambit yet. I was reviewing construction progress when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized her voice immediately. "Jake, we need to talk. I can make this worth your while." "Make what worth my while, Brenda?" "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I can pay you $50,000 to forget this whole misunderstanding and let me stay until spring. Cash, no questions asked." $50,000 in cash, meaning stolen HOA funds she couldn't deposit legally. I kept recording while she continued. "Think about it. That money could cover your divorce expenses, fix up the cabin however you want. All you have to do is call off the construction and we're even." "That's an interesting offer," I said, letting her dig deeper. "Where exactly would this cash come from?" "My personal savings. I've been very successful in real estate." "Right. The same real estate market that had tanked her income and put her house in pre-foreclosure." "I'll need to think about it," I told her, knowing the recording was solid evidence for the prosecutor. Thursday brought the mini twist that confirmed how dangerous cornered criminals could become. Derek called, voice shaking worse than autumn leaves. "Jake, you need to be careful. Brenda knows Derek's been talking to prosecutors. She threatened to burn down your cabin if the investigation doesn't go away." "She said what?" Exact quote. "If I'm going down, that bastard's losing everything too. She's bought gasoline, matches, the whole arson kit, plans to destroy the evidence and blame you for insurance fraud." The taste of adrenaline mixed with fury flooded my mouth. Brenda was willing to destroy my family's legacy rather than face consequences for her crimes. But her arson plan revealed just how trapped she felt. Burning down the cabin wouldn't help her escape. She'd still be stuck behind my construction barriers, surrounded by witnesses and security cameras I'd installed around the worksite. Friday morning brought vindication from an unexpected source. Agent Martinez from the FBI's white-collar crime unit contacted me about a broader investigation into HOA fraud across Colorado. Apparently, Brenda's schemes had attracted federal attention through the insurance fraud reports. "We've been building a case for months," Martinez explained. "Your documentation and recordings provide the final pieces we needed. We'll be executing arrest warrants Monday morning." Monday. The same day my construction project would be finishing its first week, with at least 3 more days of road closure remaining. Perfect timing for law enforcement to arrive while Brenda was still trapped on the mountain with nowhere to run. Saturday brought the first snowfall of the season, 6 inches of powder that turned the mountain access road into a winter wonderland. Even without the construction barriers, that winding gravel road would be treacherous for anyone unfamiliar with mountain driving conditions. Murphy's crew had to suspend work due to weather, which actually worked in my favor. The partially completed culvert installation created an even more impassable obstacle than active construction would have. Sunday night, I sat in my warm truck watching snowflakes drift past my headlights, knowing that somewhere up the mountain, Brenda was probably staring out my grandmother's windows, counting the hours until her world collapsed completely. 4 years of stealing from neighbors, months of squatting in my inheritance, weeks of threatening my livelihood and reputation. Tomorrow, the FBI would climb that snowy mountain path to arrest her. And the only road off this mountain ran straight through my construction site. Justice was finally coming home to roost at 8,000 feet above sea level. Brenda's final week of freedom became a masterclass in criminal desperation. Monday morning, fresh snow crunching under my boots, I hiked up to check my trail cameras and found evidence that made my blood run cold. Gasoline containers hidden behind the cabin, rags stuffed into glass bottles, a lighter collection that would make a pyrotechniac jealous. Derek hadn't been exaggerating about the arson plan, but Brenda's digital footprints revealed something even more disturbing. She'd created multiple fake social media accounts over the weekend, posting increasingly unhinged rants about corrupt property developers destroying mountain communities. "Jake Riverside thinks he can steal our ancestral land with his city money and legal tricks," read one post, complete with photos of my truck and home address. "He's destroyed our peaceful community and must be stopped before he hurts more families." Ancestral land. She'd been squatting for 6 months and suddenly it was her ancestral land. The mini twist that nearly gave me a heart attack came Tuesday morning when I discovered she'd been systematically destroying evidence. My trail cameras caught her burning documents in the fireplace at 3 a.m., bank records, contracts, correspondence that probably contained proof of additional crimes. the smell of burning paper mixed with her desperation as she fed years of fraudulent paperwork into the flames. But she made one crucial mistake. In her panic to destroy physical evidence, she forgot about digital records. The forensic accountant called Tuesday afternoon with news that made me pump my fist. "Jake, we recovered the deleted files from the HOA computer. Brenda wasn't nearly as tech-savvy as she thought. Everything's still here. Fake invoices, altered bank records, even emails coordinating the embezzlement with her brother-in-law." Wednesday brought the insurance investigators' bombshell revelation. Brenda had filed false claims on 3 other mountain properties besides my cabin. "She's been running insurance scams across multiple counties," Agent Rodriguez explained. "Total fraudulent claims exceed $85,000. This is a federal case now. Federal crimes, federal prison time. No wonder she was planning to burn everything down and disappear." Thursday morning, I watched through binoculars as Brenda attempted her most pathetic escape plan yet. She was loading a hiking backpack with supplies, apparently planning to walk out through the mountains during the snowstorm. The woman who complained about walking to her mailbox was going to hike 15 miles through December wilderness to avoid facing justice. I called the sheriff's office. "You might want to send a search and rescue team up here. I think we're about to have a missing person situation." But Brenda's hiking adventure lasted exactly 47 minutes. I watched her stumble back to the cabin, soaked and exhausted, probably realizing that mountain survival requires skills beyond intimidating elderly neighbors. Friday brought her most dangerous escalation yet. Derek called in pure panic. "She's completely lost it, Jake. Talking about taking everyone down with her if she can't escape. She knows the FBI is coming Monday. Someone at the county leaked the arrest warrant timeline." "What exactly does taking everyone down mean?" "She's threatening to claim you and the other neighbors were all part of a conspiracy to frame her. Says she'll testify that everyone knew about the embezzlement and stayed quiet for kickbacks. False testimony to federal investigators, witness tampering, obstruction of justice." Brenda was adding felonies like a collector gathering rare coins. But her most revealing moment came Friday evening when my trail cameras caught her phone conversation with someone she called Mom. "The whole thing was Jake's plan from the beginning," she lied, pacing behind my cabin in the snow. "He manipulated the HOA finances to make it look like I was stealing, then used his connections to frame me for insurance fraud. I'm the victim here, a successful businesswoman being destroyed by a vindictive property developer with deep pockets." Even facing federal prison, she couldn't admit responsibility. In her twisted reality, the woman who'd been stealing from retirees and squatting in my inheritance was somehow the victim of my elaborate conspiracy. Saturday brought the weather that sealed her fate. 8 inches of new snow overnight, with more forecast through Monday. Even if the construction barriers weren't blocking the road, those steep mountain switchbacks would be impassable without four-wheel drive and winter driving experience. Brenda was trapped more completely than if I'd built a prison around her. Sunday evening, I sat in my truck watching the final snowflakes fall, knowing that somewhere up that mountain, a desperate woman was spending her last night of freedom in my grandmother's cabin. 4 years of systematic theft from trusting neighbors, months of illegal occupation of my family property, weeks of lies, threats, and manipulation aimed at destroying my reputation. Tomorrow, federal agents would climb that snowy mountain path to arrest her. The road remained impassable. The evidence was overwhelming. The trap was perfect. Justice was finally coming for Brenda Hutchcraft, delivered at 8,000 feet above sea level with nowhere left to run. Monday morning, 7 a.m., showtime. The FBI convoy arrived at my construction site exactly on schedule. 3 black SUVs that looked like something from a federal crime drama. Agent Martinez stepped out first, followed by 2 additional agents and a county sheriff's deputy who knew the mountain terrain. Murphy's excavation crew had gathered to watch the show, coffee steaming in the cold air as federal law enforcement prepared to hike up to arrest the woman who'd been terrorizing our community for years. "Roads still impassable for vehicles," I told Martinez, gesturing toward the gaping trench and construction barriers. "But there's a hiking trail that leads directly to the cabin, about a quarter mile through the snow." The Denver Post reporter arrived just as the agents were checking their equipment. Sarah Walsh had been covering the story for weeks, and she wasn't about to miss the climax. Her photographer started documenting everything: the federal agents, the construction site, the mountain backdrop that had become Brenda's prison. "This is incredible," Walsh whispered to me as we watched the arrest team prepare. 4 years of systematic fraud, embezzlement, insurance scams, and it all ends on a mountain where she trapped herself. By 8 a.m., neighbors had gathered at the construction barriers. Word travels fast in mountain communities, and everyone wanted to witness justice finally being served. Colonel Patterson stood with Mrs. Lucy and the Kowalskis, their faces showing a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief that their HOA nightmare was finally ending. The agents disappeared up the snowy trail at 8:15. We waited in tense silence, breath visible in the cold air, listening for any sounds from the cabin. Then we heard Brenda screaming, her voice carried across the valley like a banshee wail, echoing off the mountains with pure rage and desperation. "This is illegal! You can't arrest me! I'm the victim here! Jake Riverside orchestrated this whole thing!" Even from a quarter-mile away, her delusions were audible to everyone. 20 minutes later, the agents reappeared on the trail with Brenda in handcuffs. The sight was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The woman who'd spent years intimidating elderly neighbors and threatening families with bogus fines was now being led down a snowy mountain path by federal agents, her designer boots slipping on ice while she continued her victim routine. "You're all witnesses to this conspiracy," she shouted as they approached the construction barriers. "Jake Riverside and his corrupt friends are framing an innocent woman." Agent Martinez looked tired already. "Ma'am, you've been read your rights. I strongly suggest you remain silent until you speak with an attorney." But Brenda was just getting started. As the media cameras rolled, she launched into the performance of her criminal career. "I devoted 8 years of my life to serving this community. I protected property values. I maintained standards. And this is how you repay me, by believing lies from a vindictive property developer who wanted revenge." The irony was breathtaking. She was calling me vindictive while standing in handcuffs for stealing $127,000 from the neighbors she claimed to serve. Sarah Walsh stepped forward with her microphone. "Ms. Hutchcraft, federal investigators have documented systematic embezzlement, insurance fraud, and illegal property occupation. How do you respond to these charges?" That's when Brenda delivered the mic drop moment I'd been waiting for. "Those aren't crimes when you're protecting the community. Every assessment, every fee, every decision I made was for the greater good. If people were too stupid to understand my vision for maintaining property values, that's their problem, not mine." The words hung in the cold mountain air like toxic fog. She'd just confessed to everything on camera while claiming it was justified. Agent Martinez actually smiled as he helped her into the SUV. "Thank you for that statement, Ms. Hutchcraft. The prosecutors will find it very helpful." As the federal convoy drove away with their prisoner, Colonel Patterson approached me with a respectful nod. "Son, that was the most satisfying arrest I've witnessed in 40 years of military and civilian service. That woman got exactly what she deserved." Mrs. Lucy hugged me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Jake. You saved our community from that monster." The construction crew resumed work immediately, the sound of heavy machinery echoing across the mountains as they finished installing the culvert that had provided perfect cover for justice. Sarah Walsh conducted her final interview with the mountain backdrop behind us. "This case represents a victory for small communities against corruption, fraud, and abuse of power. One man's determination to protect his family's legacy exposed crimes that devastated an entire neighborhood." But the sweetest moment came when I walked back up to my grandmother's cabin for the first time as its rightful owner. The smell of fresh snow and mountain pine filled my lungs as I unlocked the door with my own keys. Brenda Hutchcraft was finally gone. My family's legacy was secure, and justice had been served at 8,000 feet above sea level. The road construction finished 3 days ahead of schedule. Murphy's crew installed a beautiful concrete box culvert that would last 50 years, with improved drainage that actually solved the flooding problems my grandmother had dealt with for decades. The upgraded access road became a source of pride for the entire mountain community. More importantly, Brenda's abandoned Toyota Highlander was finally towed away, removing the last physical reminder of her reign of terror from my property. The legal resolution came faster than anyone expected. Facing overwhelming evidence and her own recorded confessions, Brenda pleaded guilty to 12 federal felony counts: embezzlement, insurance fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. 4 years in federal prison, 5 years probation, full restitution of $127,000 plus penalties. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order prohibiting her from any HOA participation for life. Derek received 18 months for conspiracy and lost his county job permanently. His cooperation with prosecutors meant he avoided the harsher sentences his wife received, but his career in public service was over forever. The financial recovery exceeded everyone's expectations. Asset forfeiture proceedings seized Brenda's house, vehicles, and hidden accounts, recovering $89,000 for the HOA. Insurance settlements covered most of the remaining losses, meaning residents avoided the special assessments everyone had feared. But the real transformation was community-wide. Pine Ridge HOA membership voted unanimously for complete governance reform, term limits for all board positions, monthly financial transparency reports, professional management company oversight, independent audits every 2 years. Property values increased 15% within 6 months as word spread about our clean governance and beautiful mountain location. 3 families specifically relocated to Pine Ridge because they'd heard about our community's successful fight against corruption. Mrs. Lucy was elected as our new HOA president, bringing decades of nonprofit management experience and zero tolerance for financial shenanigans. Her first act was establishing the Transparency Committee with Colonel Patterson as chairman. For me personally, the healing process began immediately. I renovated my grandmother's cabin exactly as planned, creating a peaceful weekend retreat that honored her memory while serving my needs. The corner by the fireplace became a memorial space with her favorite chair, family photos, and the hand-sewn quilts I'd recovered from Brenda's illegal sale. The cabin also became the site of our first annual Pine Ridge Transparency Festival, a community celebration combining good food, live music, and workshops on HOA financial oversight. Sarah Walsh, the Denver Post reporter, served as our keynote speaker, discussing how residents can protect themselves from local corruption. But my proudest achievement was establishing the Ethel Riverside Scholarship, using recovered funds from Brenda's crimes. Every year, we award $5,000 scholarships to students studying public administration, criminal justice, or community planning. The scholarship recipients are required to attend our transparency workshops and help teach other communities about preventing HOA fraud. It's become a model program that the State Attorney General's office recommends to mountain communities across Colorado. The technical knowledge I gained during this fight proved invaluable for other families facing similar situations. Understanding easement law, HOA financial auditing, and insurance fraud detection helped me assist 3 other communities dealing with corrupt board members. Here's what I learned that might help you. HOA residents have legal rights to inspect financial records anytime during business hours. Look for inflated contractor bills, especially from board members' relatives or friends. Compare invoiced amounts to actual work performed. Report suspicious patterns to your state attorney general's fraud hotline immediately. 1 year later, Pine Ridge has become a model mountain community. Clean finances, transparent governance, and property values that reflect our beautiful location and honest management. My grandmother's cabin hosts family gatherings, quiet writing retreats, and the occasional rental guest who appreciates authentic mountain hospitality. The creek flows clear through our upgraded culvert, and the access road handles mountain weather better than ever. Most importantly, neighbors wave when they drive past. Children play outside without fear of HOA violations. Elderly residents enjoy their retirement without harassment from power-hungry tyrants.